Hey guys, today we are building a dense European neighborhood right next to one of the most important train stations of the city. Everything your citizens will need is in walking distance right around the station.
Okay, let's go.
The whole build today will be based around the train station in the northern part of the city. The station will be a really important exchange hub for commuters from the northern part of the city. They can change to the ring line or travel to the main station, which is 2 stops apart. For that, I had to expand rail tracks from last episode. They are basically right next to the harbor in a very straight line, and build the first tracks of the ring line 2 levels above the tracks that are continuing to the northern outskirts of the city. Because the North Station is really important, it will still serve regional train lines and S-Bahn lines at the same time. The biggest difference for now is that the S-Bahn lines won't have catenaries and the regional lines have catenaries. I still have to think about it, what will be the best solution to make the S-Bahn tracks easily recognizable. I said in one of the last episodes they will be powered by a third rail, but maybe I'll just leave them like that. There are still no real workshop assets included in that build, but I used the very iconic S-Bahn trains of Berlin. I'm really in love with them, but they aren't the newest model anymore. I think it's about 2 years ago that they introduced a new S-Bahn model. Last week I was in Berlin and I made a poll for my friends on my private Insta account if they are liking the new model. And I was really surprised that like 70% or even more find the new model ugly. They had to decide between ugly or nice. And surprisingly, even my Berlin native friends choose ugly. The old S-Bahn trains are typically Berlin style, even in the interior. You could easily recognize them, for example, based on the color of the seats. But now they have the typical blue seat color, which is basically everywhere in every German regional train. Maybe it's because of that, I don't know. What's really interesting, you can use the new S-Bahn trains as metros when you have the vehicles of the world pack. For now we haven't any population yet, but that will change in a few minutes. If the whole rail system will be used in game as it gets used in real life, we will see when the population is a bit bigger. But I always tend to overbuild my infrastructure for my population. At almost any of my series I get comments like, you have too much roads, the city is built for cars, and so on. This time there will probably be too much rail infrastructure, but I try to build not so much roads. When it comes to the topic if Berlin is a car-centric city or not, I think Berlin isn't a good example in real life for a car-free utopia. It's one of a few German cities where highways go directly through the city. And what's the most shocking, Berlin is even building a new highway through a dense urban environment, which is unheard of in the 21st century in my opinion. When it comes to bike and pedestrian friendliness, I think Germany is not that progressive like the Netherlands, for example. I wonder why it's like that. Maybe because of our car industry? Yes, the car industry in Germany plays a big role. It provides many jobs And with all the big brands we have and all the suppliers, it has a huge impact at our economy. Also, the car lobby is obviously really strong and has a big influence in the decision making of our country. And if I'm being totally honest, I can understand politicians when it comes to new construction or expansion of existing highways. I would also prefer to be chauffeured in the S-Class instead of having to take the train. Now I started to lay out the roads for a dense urban neighborhood. I hadn't the patience yet to fill in every single block, but I start later with the first ones. It will be really painful to fill in every single block, but the most recognizable thing about European cities is you won't never ever have a real grid. Many streets are based off old footpaths from many hundred years ago and have slowly expanded into wider avenues and streets. I also tried to play a little bit with different layers of height. There's like a 9 or 12 meter difference from the train tracks to the neighborhood above, but this will make the city much more interesting, especially when you're building on a completely flat map like I do right now. Here in front of the train station is a little pedestrian area. There will be a huge mixed zone building with shops underneath and residential apartments above. I know in-game that's a bit problematic because of the noise pollution of the train station, but something like that totally exists in real life. There the game behaves sometimes a little bit strange in my opinion. I use the international buildings for that because I think they fit the time period a little bit better. I can imagine that the huge corner building would be built in the 70s or 80s, and yeah, the design of these buildings is at least questionable. Right next to train stations you can often find huge shopping centers. This one I PO'd so it has the perfect shape to fit in between the streets. I modified some 1x1 buildings with Rico I would never use. Now they have instead of one workplace, 100. So the shopping center has a real purpose and isn't just decorative. Right next to it there are some more apartments that I painted yellow, a little park and a high school. Now we can start with the typical European building style. For that I widened the streets to 4-tile wide roads. Then I filled the blocks with all the assets. I used the Plop the Growables mod for that. I realized the variety of buildings is really tiny because they use the same models for level 1 to 5. It would be much cooler if the level 1 buildings, for example, and for each level up the building would get 1 story taller each time. But so you would probably see in the whole city the same 5 buildings. I will see what I can do about this problem. Now the whole block is filled. I modified the corner buildings with PO to match the exact angles of the roads, and I filled in some gaps with even more houses. I PO'd them so they don't need road access. I also bobbed away some trees and will now start to upgrade the roads to the smallest streets again. I also used the park life paths to build wider sidewalks and filled the inside of the blocks with parking lots, asphalt, trees and so on. So that was episode 3 of the series. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and we will see us next time. Bye bye.